Good evening and welcome back. Today, we travel high above the mortal world, into a realm of thunder and prophecy, jealousy and fate, the world of the ancient Greek gods. We will explore the stories of the Olympians, the titans who came before them, and the tangled relationships that shaped both heaven and earth. These are myths of creation, power, love, revenge, and everything that lies in between. As always, I would love to know from which part of the world you are listening and what time it is for you. Whether you are lying in bed, falling asleep to the sound of soft thunder, or have simply decided to give your mind a respite, this time belongs to you. In the beginning, there was nothing. No void, no sky, no sea, not even the whisper of a wind. There was no time, no movement, no light to mark the passing of ages, nor a sound that could echo at the birth of the world. There is only chaos, a vast, gaping abyss, boundless and dark. The raw potential of everything that would ever rise. Out of this silent chaos, as inevitable as the stirring of a thought in a dream, the first entities appeared. They were not born as humans are born, nor even as the gods would later be born. They emerged suddenly and fully, each embodying a vital force of existence. First came Gaia, the earth itself, vast and heavy, firm and fertile, the eternal foundation upon which all things would stand. Beside her rose Tartarus, the deep abyss, a spectral cavern beneath all things, black and unknowable, destined to become the prison of the gods. From the same murky silence came Eros, the force of desire and union, the soft mystery that would make form seek form, and life reach for life. Then appeared Nyx, the velvet of night, shrouding the world in her sable wings, and Erebus, the darkness of shadows and the space between them. From these formless beginnings, the cosmos began to take shape, not by the command of order or reason, but with the slow inevitability of a tree reaching for the sun, even when the sun is not visible. Gaia, the first and greatest of the primordial beings, brought forth a child within herself to crown the heavens. Uranus, the sky, was vast and starry, an eternally arching dome above her. He was equal to her in size and strength, but it was she who created him, and it was she who received him. Together they formed the first union of earth and sky, and from this union came 12 mighty beings who would inherit the world in their image. These were the Titans, 6 men and 6 women, each more radiant and more terrible than the last. Their names were whispered like thunder in forgotten valleys. Oceanus, who encircled the world with endless waters. Coeus, lord of the axis and stars. Crius, obscure and distant. Hyperion, whose light would pass to the sun. Iapetus, the progenitor of suffering and toil. And Cronus, the youngest and craftiest, with his hard gaze and even sharper ambition. Their sisters were Thea, whose gaze gave birth to light. Rhea, destined to be queen. Themis, whose presence brought law to chaos. Mnemosyne, memory made flesh. Phoebe, bright as prophecy. And Tethys, the mother of rivers. But Gaia and Uranus produced not only titans, they also brought forth stranger creations, more ancient, more primal. From the deep places in Gaia's flesh came the Cyclops, one-eyed giants with arms like tree trunks, and faces set with burning eyes. And with them came the Hecatoncheires, the 100-handed, monstrous and vast, each having 50 heads and 100 arms that lashed the mountains like storms. Uranus looked upon these children and felt not love, but loathing. He called them unnatural, feared the power pulsing in their too numerous limbs, and deemed them too terrible to walk the earth. Therefore, he forcibly returned them to Gaia's womb, thrusting them into the darkness of Tartarus, burying them deep within her body where, he believed, they could be forgotten. Gaia groaned under their weight. Her womb ached, her veins burst with the strain, and although she had once loved Uranus, the pain he caused her chilled her heart. Her children cried in her depths, bound and blind, and her anger kindled like embers under wet ash. Gaia, the earth itself, plotted revenge. She silently called out to her Titan sons, begging one to rise and strike at the sky. But fear silenced them, for Uranus stretched over all things, and even the mighty Titans trembled under his gaze. Only one answered, Cronus, the youngest and sharpest, who never blinked in the face of pain or prophecy, stepped forward. Gaia, pleased and stern, forged for him a sickle of the hardest adamant. Cold and curved, it shone like moonlight and thirsted for divine blood. Cronus took the weapon and lay in ambush. One evening, when Uranus descended to lie with Gaia, drawn by his desire and unaware of the betrayal, Cronus leapt from his hiding place and swung the sickle. With one terrible blow, he severed his father's genitals, and the sky screamed. Uranus's blood splattered the earth and foamed upon the sea. From the earth where it fell, Gaia gave birth again. The Erinyes rose black-clad spirits of vengeance with eyes dripping blood and hair woven of snakes. The giants were born huge and fierce. Their legs were rooted in the mountains, and their fury was as old as night. And from the white foam that boiled around the severed flesh in the sea, a goddess arose, already grown, Aphrodite, laughter-loving and deadly, born not from a womb, but from blood, salt, and sky. Uranus fled the world, retreating into the heavens, cursing Cronus with his final breath. He cried out that Cronus, too, would be overthrown by his own child, that the wheel of fate would turn as it always must, grinding even the strongest to dust. But Cronus only laughed, crowned with blood, holding the sickle that made him king. He threw the severed flesh into the sea and turned to his brothers and sisters. The age of Uranus had ended. The age of the Titans began. The world was young, and it had already known betrayal, pain, ambition, and prophecy. It was not the last time. Not in a world where gods can bleed, mothers can plot, and children can become kings. Uranus was overthrown, and his cries still echoed in the furthest corners of the cosmos, while Cronus stood tall among his brethren, the adamant sickle heavy in his hand, and the air round him thick with silence. There was no formal coronation, no heavenly trumpet sounded, no divine consent crowning his reign. He was simply king, as all tyrants are when the hand of the stronger descends. His brothers and sisters looked at him not with love, but with that sharp and glittering fear that gathers like frost on leaves just before winter begins. Gaia, proud of the son who had carried out her revenge, gazed upon him with weary satisfaction. However, the earth knew, even if Cronus did not, that the pattern was already set. Fathers fall at the hands of sons, and kings do not rule forever. But the world was young, and the Titans rejoiced. For an entire age, peace reigned. The air was thick with life, and the soil hummed under the footsteps of the Titans. Mountains grew tall and proud, and rivers found their winding paths through the new lands of the earth. Cronus ruled with the confidence of one who had taken power through blood, and would not give it up easily. Beside him stood his sister and Queen Rhea, majestic and cold as starlight, her gaze unreadable and her silence deep as ocean trenches. Together they brought into the world a second generation of gods' beings, who would later bear the names of Olympians, but in that era, they were merely children not yet feared. The realm of the Titans was vast and ordered. Cronus sat high, delivering judgments, commanding the winds and weather, shaping the elements under his iron will. It was a golden age not because it was just, but because it was first. The Titans ruled because they had no challenges, and the world was too young to dream of rebellion. But prophecy does not sleep. It waits. It clings to the edges of every throne and settles in the marrow of the one who sits upon it. Cronus, for all his power and mastery, could not forget his father's words, cast like a curse through time with his final breath. One day a son of Cronus would rise against him, just as he had risen against the sky. This thought, often whispering in the night silence, grew in his mind like a thorny vine, tightening around his reason with each passing year. And so, like a man drowning in dreams of fire, Cronus acted with cruelty in the name of precaution. Every time Rhea bore him a child, he took the newborn god from her arms and swallowed it whole. This was not done in anger. There was no fury in his eyes when he performed this silent, terrible ritual, only cold necessity, sharpened by fear. First was Hestia, goddess of the hearth and flame, swallowed while her eyes were still closed to the world. Then Demeter, who would make the fields bloom. Then Hera, destined to be queen. Then Hades, whose grim lot was already traced in the cold places of the underworld. Then Poseidon, god of the sea, when a word for the ocean did not yet even exist. 5 children, divine and immortal, consumed not in violence, but to forestall fate. Each time Rhea wept in silence, her mourning swallowed by the wide halls of Cronus's domain. She was hollowed by grief. Her eyes were rimmed with shadows, her womb filled with despair, and each time she lay on the birthing stone, she whispered to Gaia, who listened in the dark places of the earth and quietly plotted, as she always did. By the 6th child, Rhea could bear it no longer. She secretly went to the heart of Gaia's domain, where the earth whispered with ancient memory, and there she devised a plan. When the time came and her 6th child was born, she did not give him into Cronus's hands. Instead, she gave him a stone wrapped in cloth, smooth, heavy, and silent. Cronus took it without suspicion and swallowed it, like the others, believing the threat was again suppressed. The child, however, a boy with eyes like storm clouds and a cry like thunder, was secretly carried away by Rhea to the island of Crete, far from Cronus's gaze. There, in a cave hidden in the folds of the mountains, young Zeus was raised in secret. His cradle was carved from rock and suspended by golden chains from the branches of a sacred tree, so that he touched neither earth nor sky, hiding him from the reach of his father's sight. Around him danced the Curetes and Zeus, who struck their swords against shields to drown out the infant's cries. Their war dance was a lullaby of violence, designed to hide the sound of a destiny being nurtured in silence. The goat Amalthea fed him with her milk, rich and divine, and from her horn would one day pour endless abundance the cornucopia. Nymphs bathed him in sacred water and whispered to him stories of the stars. As Zeus grew, so did his strength, and the wrath of the heavens waited behind his eyes. He learned of his birth, of his swallowed brothers and sisters, of the stone that Cronus had swallowed in his place. And he vowed in the night cold and in the echoing halls of the cave that he would not let the same fate befall him. The world outside turned, unaware that in a hidden grotto, revenge was ripening like fruit on a vine. The age of the Titans continued, but in the roots of the mountain, the child of thunder listened to the earth and prepared. The same prophecy that had toppled Uranus now beat like a second heart beneath the soil. For in the world of the gods, no feast lasts forever, no crown sits easily, and no power is ever completely safe from a child born in the shadows, with a name whispered only by mothers and nymphs. For a time, the reign of Cronus was celebrated throughout the land as a golden age, not for its justice or mercy, but for its simplicity. There was order, there was stability. The Titans ruled over the known world, their power unsurpassed, and their names were etched like iron into the bones of the mountains and the farthest reaches of the ocean. Mortals, recently awakened from the soil and breath of Gaia, lived in quiet harmony, untouched by the horrors of war or the endless upheavals of ambition that would later leave scars upon the centuries. They did not age. They did not suffer from the pain of hunger or disease. They lived in union with the earth, and the earth, still young and strong, fed them without complaint. This age knew no kings among men, no cities fortified with blood, no altars scorched by sacrifices. The gods walked afar, proud, and the world turned under their shadow, untroubled by rebellions or coups, and at the center of it all stood Cronus, watchful and silent. The sickle that had won him the heavens was no longer in his hand, but was buried deep, hidden where no one could claim it, or so he hoped. Cronus ruled not by cruelty, but by fear, not the fear of those he governed, for men in that era did not yet call upon their gods with terror. No, it was his own fear that governed all existence. The prophecy of Uranus hung over him like a sword balanced on a frayed thread, ready to fall under the weight of a whisper. His father's voice still echoed in the corners of Cronus's mind, soft as smoke and sharp as broken stone, warning that his own son would rise against him. And Cronus, for all his power, had learned well what happens to those who ignore prophecy. He himself had once been a prophecy. He had drawn the blade. He knew its power. And so he decided not to wait for the knife to find his throat. He decided to stifle the future before it could even open its eyes. When Rhea, his sister and queen, bore him their first child, a daughter wrapped in flame and warmth, Cronus took her from Rhea's arms before the mother could even give her a name. The child was Hestia, goddess of the hearth, the steady fire at the center of all homes. Cronus looked into the infant's eyes that carried no threat, no rebellion, only innocence and a flickering flame. And he opened his jaws and swallowed her whole. There was no blood, no breaking bones, no scream. She vanished from the world like a dream dissolving at dawn. Her divine body disappeared into the cavern of his womb, imprisoned but not destroyed. This act was not born of hatred. It was a sacrifice made to fear. When Rhea bore the second, Demeter, goddess of the harvest and the waiting field, Cronus did the same. Then Hera, the formidable future queen, proud even in infancy. Then Hades, whose dark gaze was already fixed on the caverns below. Then Poseidon, shrouded in salt and the breath of the sea. His cries echoed like waves against the shore. Each was taken, each was swallowed, each was bound by silence within the body of their father. And Rhea, who had once walked as a queen through the halls of Olympus, withered with grief and grew heavy with anger. Her arms, deprived of children again and again, trembled with a rage she did not speak aloud. But the pain in her womb did not subside. The cycle continued, and in the silence, she turned not to her husband, nor to her sisters, but to Gaia, the eternal, wise one, who knew well the pain of betrayal and the bitter taste of revenge. Gaia, who had once planned the fall of Uranus, listened once more, and together they devised a plan not of war or confrontation, but of quiet defiance, the kind that grows in the spaces between heartbeats and breaths. When Rhea bore the sixth child, she did not announce it. She did not cry aloud. She slipped away to the island of Crete, to a cave beneath Mount Ida, where the air was thick with the scent of cedar and goat's milk, and the sky seemed too distant to hear a cry. There, in secrecy and sorrow, she gave birth to Zeus. The boy was strong from his first breath, his lungs full of thunder, and his fingers clenched as if they were already reaching for a crown. Rhea kissed him on the forehead and vowed that the jaws of no Titan would ever close around him. When she returned to Cronus, she carried not a son, but a swaddled stone. It was wrapped in soft cloth and smeared with the scent of afterbirth. Cronus, blinded by habit and terror, asked no questions. He took the bundle and swallowed it whole. The deception worked. Zeus was saved, and high in the mountains, surrounded by faithful nymphs and protected by the clashing dance of the Curetes, the divine infant was nurtured on the milk of Amalthea, and soothed by lullabies older than language itself. Years passed, and the boy grew. He grew in strength, in cunning, and in purpose. He knew that his brothers and sisters were not dead, but bound in the womb of a tyrant. He knew that his father's time was borrowed, a fire fed only by the kindling of fear. And he knew, as all sons must one day learn, that the world built by his father was not the one he would inherit. It was a world he would have to destroy. But not yet. The Golden Age continued, its days secretly numbered, its sunsets beautiful and doomed. The Titans still ruled, but the wind had changed. Somewhere far from the throne, a storm was learning to speak. By the time Zeus reached maturity, the world had not yet seen him. He grew up in secret, cherished by the earth, tempered by solitude, and raised among ancient entities who whispered to him of duty and revenge. The Cretan cave in which he was hidden still rang with the clashing weapons of the Curetes, the dance of defiance that masked his infancy now, in his maturity, stirred his blood like the sound of distant war drums. He learned from Gaia that he was not alone in this world. Not quite, for within the entrails of Cronus, his brothers and sisters still lived, swallowed but not digested. Immortal and captive, shimmering like stifled stars. Hestia, the gentle flame. Demeter, the patient harvest. Hera, fierce in her pride. Hades, brooding in the darkness. Poseidon, restless as the tide. They lived, and Zeus felt them in his dreams, their essence calling to him like voices from beneath the sea. He did not know them, not truly, but he carried the memory of them in his marrow. And he knew that his father's reign was a sickness of the world, a fragile shell of power, built on fear and sealed by silence. It was Gaia who first led him to Metis, the wise titaness who understood the tides of prophecy and the art of cunning. Together, Zeus and Metis plotted the downfall of Cronus, not with swords and storms, but with a drink laced with ancient magic, a potion brewed from the roots of the earth and the bile of serpents, bitter and thick with the power of reversal. Zeus came not in anger. He came as a servant, hidden by humility, carrying the poisoned drink in a cup of carved stone. Cronus, as proud as he was weary, suspected nothing. He drank, and the world changed. First came the stone, cold and round, still wrapped in the cloth that Rhea had once placed in his hands. It rolled from his throat and struck the ground with the weight of a fulfilled prophecy. Then appeared the gods. One by one, his children returned to the world, in full bloom and radiant, as if time had not passed, as if they had merely been dreaming in sleep. Hestia, Demeter, Hera, Hades, Poseidon, they emerged not as infants, but as immortals forged in the furnace of suffering. Their eyes glowed with the fire of destiny. They stood beside Zeus not as subjects, but as equals. The 6 children of Cronus, now reunited, had no need to speak a vow aloud. It hung between them, unspoken but unbreakable. They would not be swallowed again. They would rise. They would begin a war. And so began the Titanomachy, the war that tore the heavens and split the earth. A conflict that raged for 10 years and shook the very bones of the world. On one side stood the old gods, the Titans, led by Cronus and bolstered by the power of his brothers and sisters, towering beings of immense strength, each bearing the memory of the first age. On the other side stood the younger gods, the Olympians, fierce and burning with purpose, wielding the fury of youth and the justice of rebellion. The war was not a single battle, nor a clash of arms that ended with the coronation of a victor. It was a storm that lasted a decade, a siege of time itself. Mountains were hurled like spears. Rivers turned red not from blood, but from the power of the divine. Day and night lost meaning as the heavens blazed, and the earth cracked under the weight of the struggle. At first, the Titans held the advantage. Cronus fought with a desperation born of inevitability, striking with all the terror of one who knows his throne cannot stand, but refuses to fall without fire. The younger gods, mighty as they were, could not alone overcome the entrenched power of the Titans. But Gaia, ever watchful, whispered again to Zeus, reminding him of the allies his father had once buried. Deep in Tartarus, in chains of torment, still lay the 100-handed Briareus, Cottus, and Jason the Cyclops, children of Gaia and Uranus. Born before time and stronger than mountains, Zeus descended into the abyss, into the realm of shadow and sorrow, where even the light of the gods could barely hold on to the walls. There he found them, bound by suffering, their hundreds of arms hanging helplessly, their hundreds of mouths silent. He broke their chains. He spoke to them not as a master, but as a brother. In return, they presented him with gifts. The Cyclops, once despised, forged weapons to match the fury of the heavens. For Zeus, they created the thunderbolt, a spear of lightning that split the heavens with a single cry. For Poseidon, they fashioned the trident, a weapon capable of stirring the oceans and crushing the land. For Hades, they gave the helm of darkness, a crown of invisibility, hiding its wearer from sight and spirit alike. Armed and emboldened, the Olympians rose again, not as rebels, but as gods of destiny. The final days of the war were apocalyptic. Briareus and his brothers hurled boulders like hail. Zeus poured thunder onto the peaks of Thessaly. Poseidon shook the sea until islands split in two. Hades, invisible, glided through the ranks of the Titans, sowing confusion and fear. Finally, Cronus fell not in a blaze of glory, but in exhaustion, defeated not only by the power of his children, but by the prophecy he had tried to defy. The Titans were crushed, bound in chains of indestructible bronze, and cast into Tartarus, deeper than dreams, below the very roots of the earth. There, guarded by the 100-handed, they would remain, howling in the silence memories of a power that could not survive time. Zeus stood over the battlefield not as a child of prophecy, but as a king. The sky cleared. The war was over. The age of the Titans had ended. A new age was ready to begin. But peace in the world of gods is always fleeting, and a throne, once occupied, is never secure. The war ended. Also the gods believed. The Titans had been cast into Tartarus, bound beneath the roots of the world, and the sky, once split by thunder and the screams of battle, grew silent. Zeus took the throne not by solemn ceremony, but by the simple fact of victory. The halls of Olympus, recently erected atop the mountain piercing the heavens, began to fill with the echo of the new god's footsteps. Their voices rang loud with triumph, and their laughter flowed like wine through the stone corridors. But far beneath their feet, deeper than the darkness of Hades, the earth remembered its wounds. The blood of Uranus still pulsed in her buried veins, and Gaia, ancient and resilient, shuddered in rage. She had aided the Olympians in their war, but her loyalty had never belonged to Zeus. Her devotion was given to balance, vengeance, and the old order that had been overthrown. The fall of Cronus did not heal the pain of Uranus. It merely shifted the burden of power from one set of hands to another. The throne of heaven changed owners, but its arrogance remained, and Gaia, who had seen the rise and fall of 2 generations of kings, was not yet finished with prophecies. In the depths of the world, Gaia summoned Tartarus himself, that ghostly abyss that swallows light and laughs at the very notion of form. Together they created a final son, born not to rule, but to destroy. His name was Typhon, and no god had ever looked upon something so vast and terrible. His body was greater than mountains, his form shifting like smoke and shadow, and his head reached the stars. Serpents writhed upon his thighs, and his arms stretched from the eastern edge of the world to the farthest west. His voice was the wail of 1,000 beasts, and his eyes burned with fire. When he breathed, it scorched the sky. When he roared, even the dead stirred in their tombs. He was the last offspring of the earth, the storm that would end all thrones. Even the Titans in their prime did not possess such monstrous strength. Typhon rose from the depths like a nightmare made flesh. The sea retreated at his approach. Mountains bent like reeds. As he neared Olympus, the sky darkened with unnatural clouds, and thunder split the heavens not from the hand of Zeus, but from the fury of something more ancient and angry than the gods had ever known. The Olympians saw him and despaired. They had tasted war, but they had never seen this. Many fled. Apollo, swift as ever, vanished into the west. Hermes slipped into the shadows. Ars, the god of war, trembled and fled to distant lands. Only a few remained. Athena stood firm, spear in hand, her face cold as marble, and Zeus, whose hand still held the lightning, refused to abandon his throne. Zeus met Typhon one-on-one. The battle was not a single strike or counter-strike. It was a cataclysm, a war of elements, a struggle whose echoes vibrated through all the worlds of existence. Typhon hurled mountains like stones. He tore out rivers and flung them at the sky. His serpents lashed the stars. Zeus met him with a storm. Bolts of lightning erupted from his palm like spears of fire. Thunder shook the air. The winds obeyed his command, howling with rage, and the rain fell in a wall, flooding the valleys. They fought in the heavens, on the earth, and even in the sea, their clash reshaping the world with every blow. Zeus struck Typhon down on Mount Haemus, and the monster's blood stained its slopes forever. Typhon did not die. He rose again and, in a moment of weakness, overcame the king of the gods. With his monstrous limbs, he tore the sinews from the hands and feet of Zeus, stripping him of the very strength that made him lord. Maimed and bound, Zeus was carried by Typhon to a distant cave in Cilicia, hidden among black rocks and jagged cliffs, where he was imprisoned, helpless and mocked. But gods are not so easily killed. Word of Zeus's captivity passed into the hands of Hermes and Pan, who together crept into the cave. Hidden by shadow and guile, they tricked the monstrous guardian and stole the sinews back, escaping with the speed of the wind and a goat's hoof. When they restored the stolen strength to Zeus, the heavens trembled again from his fury. No longer bound, no longer silent, he rose in anger. He summoned every gale. The skies turned black, the stars hid behind a veil, and the earth itself held its breath. The final clash occurred not in the sky, but on the earth, where Zeus unleashed the full power of his lightning into the very heart of Typhon. The blow shook the world. Typhon screamed, his voice a chorus of agony that split mountains and drove beasts mad. Torn and broken, he faltered, and Zeus finally cast him down. He fell into the depths of the earth, where even Gaia could not reach. There he was buried, crushed beneath Mount Etna in Sicily, his body encased in molten stone, his breath emerging as smoke, his limbs writhing in impotent rage. The volcano that became his prison still shudders from his fury, still smokes from his breath. It is said that, when Etna erupts, it is Typhon stirring in his chains, dreaming of revenge and storm. Having defeated the monster, Zeus returned to Olympus not only as king, but as savior. He had faced the ultimate horror, the last child of the earth's wrath, and stood firm. The other gods, who had fled or faltered, returned silently to his halls. They knelt and accepted the new order, not out of love, but out of awe. Olympus belonged to Zeus now not by right, but by right of conquest. And though the throne was his, he knew what Gaia had always known. The world remembers, the world does not forgive. And even the greatest gods must always keep one eye on the deep abysses beneath their feet, where monsters dream of fire and the future waits in silence. The sky grew quiet again. The air, once thick with the smoke of burning mountains and the scent of scorched divine blood, went still. The echo of Typhon's defeat faded from memory, but its weight remained in the bones of the gods. Zeus, who had fought the storm and stood bloodied before the jaws of annihilation, returned to Olympus changed. He held the throne through victory, cunning, and fulfilled prophecy. And now, having faced the wrath of the earth itself, he established his power finally. There would be no more monsters. There would be no more wars between gods, at least, if he could prevent it. But Zeus, for all his thunder and might, was no fool. He knew that power is never stable unless it is shared in balance. Even the sky cannot exist without the pull of the sea or the silence of the underworld. And so, while the blood of the old age had not yet dried on the soil, the three sons of Cronus gathered and cast lots to divide the mastery over all existence. They did not argue. They did not entreat. They left their fates to chance, as was the custom of the gods. Each drew from an urn a sign inscribed by destiny. To Zeus went the sky, the heavens above, the clouds and winds, and the throne of Olympus itself. To Poseidon went the sea, the bottomless deep and every wave that ever rolled toward a shore. And to Hades, the eldest and most stern, went the underworld, the ghostly land where the dead drift in silence and memory. The earth itself, the realm of mortals, mountains and forests, remained unclaimed, divided equally among them, though each touched it in their own way. It was said the lot fell fairly, though some whispered that Zeus had nudged fate with an unseen hand, but no one challenged it aloud. Balance was achieved, and the world knew order for the first time. Zeus ascended his throne atop Olympus, a chair he carved from the bones of the storm, encircled by a ring of clouds and guarded by law. Around him gathered a new pantheon, gods born of the swallowed and returned children of Cronus, and others born of the earth and sea in quieter days. There was Hera, his sister and now his queen, proud and watchful, whose eyes always search for betrayal behind the veil of ceremonies. There was Demeter, who brought the first wheat from her fingers and secretly gave it to mortals. Hestia, who rekindled every hearth in every home. Poseidon, who set the sea in motion and built palaces beneath the waves of coral and stone. Hades, who descended into the deep places of the world and built a realm for the dead, cold and orderly, lit only by the flickering memory of life. And Zeus, who ruled not as a tyrant, but as the guardian of balance, the dispenser of justice, the god of storm and sky and the hidden fates that bind gods and men together. But power, once won, must be maintained. Zeus set about creating not just a cult, but a structure of divine law. He declared oaths sacred, punishable by death or worse. He appointed the Moirae to spin the threads of all mortal and immortal lives, their shears sharp and unerring. He directed the Araneas, the Furies, to hunt those who shed the blood of kin. He demanded reverence and sacrifice, not as tribute, but as a recognition of order. And when his cousin Prometheus, son of Iapetus and brother of Epimetheus, dared to challenge him by siding with mortals and stealing fire from the gods, to warm their trembling fingers, Zeus did not hesitate. Prometheus, whose foresight was said to rival the oracles, was chained to a mountain at the edge of the world. Every day an eagle descended to him and tore out his liver. Every night it grew back anew. Immortal suffering for an immortal crime. Justice, as Zeus defined it. But justice in the hands of a god is never without spectacle. To punish humanity for the theft of fire, Zeus commissioned the gods to create a new being, more dangerous than any monster of the past. From clay, Hephaestus fashioned her. With beauty, Aphrodite blessed her. With charm and guile, Hermes and Apollo endowed her with their gifts. Her name was Pandora, and she was sent to Epimetheus, the reckless brother of Prometheus, who accepted her against all warnings. With her came a tightly sealed jar. She opened it, as she was bound to do, and from it spilled every woe the world had not yet known. Disease, famine, sorrow, betrayal, war. Inside remained only hope, clinging to the lid like a final whisper in the dark. Thus the era of mortals truly began not in innocence, but in knowledge, in struggle, and in fear. And yet, Zeus ruled. He looked down from Olympus and watched the slow march of humanity, their prayers rising like smoke, their temples built of stone, salt, and plea. He listened to the songs they sang in glory of his name and the names of his kin. He punished the arrogant, rewarded the pious, and moved the world as a man might stir the embers in a brazier, never letting the fire go out. The earth was no longer wild. It was shaped, defined, and divided. But beneath its surface, Gaia still slept, and the Titans still stirred in their dungeons, and the old truth still whispered through the roots of the trees and the lips of dying seers. The war was over. The throne was secure, but Olympus was not invulnerable. No kingdom ever is. And the age of Zeus, though it had only just begun, would not be without its trials. High on Mount Olympus, where no mortal foot could tread, and where no stone could reach, unless it was summoned by divine will, rose the great halls of the gods made of clouds and stone. Marble columns shimmered in the light of dawn, and silver fires burned eternally in corridors that stretched wider than valleys. It was here that Zeus, the king of the gods, ruled the sky and the earth. His seat was carved from the heavens themselves, shrouded in storm clouds and pierced by lightning. He held the aegis, a terrible shield, fringed with serpents and crowned with the head of the Gorgon. His voice summoned storms. His will was law. And beside him, clad not in thunder but in ice, stood Hera, his sister and queen, goddess of marriage, sovereignty, and divine vengeance. Where the rule of Zeus was loud and crackling, like the sky in battle, Hera's dominion was silent and enduring, like a crown passing from one ruler to another through blood and time. Their union was not born of love, though there was passion in it, and was not born of peace, though it lasted longer than any mortal kingdom. It was forged in power, in the merging of two great lineages, and sealed by the old laws that governed the divine long before men gave them names. Zeus wooed Hera with all the guile he could summon, for she did not surrender easily and did not offer her hand thoughtlessly. Zeus appeared to her, shrouded in mist, in the form of a shivering bird, cold and small, seeking shelter in her lap. She warmed the creature, unaware of the truth, and when her guard was lowered, Zeus revealed himself and possessed her with the force of a storm. She wept not from grief, but from rage, and vowed that she would marry him, if only to bind this insult with the chains of law. And so she became his wife, not by voluntary consent, but by an oath sealed by divine tradition. From day, Hera sat beside Zeus on Olympus, proud and clear-eyed, but never tamed. It was a marriage of thrones, not of hearts. Zeus, for all his greatness, was a god of appetites. He craved beauty and wit, songs and flesh, and followed his hunger wherever it led. Nymphs, goddesses, mortal queens, and unsuspecting maidens all were drawn into his orbit. Sometimes by charm, often by deception, he changed shape to reach them. A swan, a bull, a golden rain. He bent the laws of form and time to satisfy his whims. And Hera, bound by her position, watched. She knew. She always knew. The Queen of Heaven was no fool. Her silence was never ignorance. It was patience turned into anger. Hera's revenge was not swift. It was not like the lightning of Zeus, loud and fleeting. Her revenge was slow and precise. She did not strike at Zeus. She struck at what he loved. At his mistresses, who bore children of fate and tragedy. At his sons and daughters, demigods destined from birth to bear the burden of their father's sins. Io, turned into a heifer and pursued across the world by a stinging gadfly. Semele, burned to ash by the divine form of Zeus, her unborn child, torn from her body and sewn into Zeus' own thigh. Leto, exiled and hunted while pregnant with twins. Alcmene, who gave birth to Hercules and was pursued by Hera's hatred before the infant even took his first breath. Hera's punishments were cruel, but they were always deliberate. She did not rage blindly. She organized the downfall of those who trampled upon her dignity. It is said there was one occasion when Hera could endure no more. The weight of humiliation, the whispers in the golden halls of Olympus, the quiet sympathy in Athena's eyes and the mocking laughter of Aphrodite pushed her to action. She gathered the other gods, Poseidon with his trident gripped in contempt, Athena with her cold logic, Apollo with his sun-drenched pride, and together they plotted a conspiracy against Zeus. While the king of gods slept, they crept into his chambers and bound him with chains forged by Hephaestus himself. They shackled him in silence, thinking to impose a new order upon Olympus, but their rebellion failed, as rebellions often fail when power is underestimated. Thetis, the silver-footed sea nymph, summoned Briareus, the hundred-handed, who rose with a roar from the depths and broke the chains with ease. Zeus awoke and in a rage seized Hera. He suspended her from the sky with golden shackles, her hands stretched wide and anvils tied to her ankles. She wept, but not for mercy. She wept because he had made a spectacle of her, because in his anger, he tried to humiliate her before the whole world. She did not forget. In time, he released her. There was no apology, no reconciliation, only an unspoken truce between sovereigns who knew their power depended on whether they stood side by side, whether in unity or in silence. Hera returned to her throne and took her place as queen. More watchful than ever. She would never forgive the insults. She would never forget the pain. But she would wear her crown. And she would rule with grace and terror. For Olympus was not just the kingdom of Zeus. It was her kingdom too, shaped by her silence, her revenge, and her unwavering resolve. Together, Zeus and Hera governed the heavens. Their children were few, but they were mighty. Ars, the god of war, fierce and impetuous. Hebe, the goddess of youth and Kybera to the gods. Eileithyia, the goddess of childbirth. Hephaestus, who was cast down from Olympus for his deformity or for the audacity to protect his mother, depending on which legend one believes. Their home was a battlefield and a court, a place of feasting and justice, of grudges and alliances. The royal family of Olympus was no different from the dynasties of mortal kings, proud, fractured, bound by blood and burden. And at its heart sat Zeus and Hera, eternal and warring, locked in a marriage that outlasted empires and would outlast them still. Not a love story, but a reign. Not a union, but a throne shared between two gods too proud to yield. Among the many paradoxes that shaped the storm-crowned reign of Zeus, there was nothing more marvelous and terrifying than the strange appearance of his children. They were not born as the children of mortals are born, with pain, blood, and the soft cry of a new life. No, the offspring of Zeus entered the world as omens, sudden, radiant, and strange, as if the very fabric of existence could not long hold them within. Their births were tangled in prophecies, in revenge, in deception and pride, and none was as unusual as the birth of Athena, the bright-eyed goddess of wisdom, war and reason, strategy and the cities of men. Her coming was not predicted by the stars or sung by nymphs, but whispered in fear by the earth itself. For Zeus had taken Metis, the wisest of the Titanesses, daughter of Oceanus and Tethys, whose mind was said to be deep as the sea and subtle as mist. She was not seduced by power or fire. Zeus pursued her with patience, cloaking himself in flattery and reasoning, drawing her into his arms, not out of passion, but because the world had become too unstable for a woman like her to walk free. But even having conquered, he feared her, for Gaia and Uranus had warned him that Metis would bear him two children. The first would be a daughter, wiser than her mother. The second, a son who would become more powerful than his father and overthrow him. Just as Zeus had overthrown Cronus, and Cronus before him had struck down Uranus. Zeus, who had once freed the world from the tyranny of his parent, now trembled at the thought of his own fall. And so, when Metis was heavy with child, he began to act. He called to her with sweet words and lured her to his side. Then, without warning or hesitation, he opened his mouth and swallowed her whole. The gods who witnessed this said nothing. The air grew still. Metis vanished into his body, and with her the child she carried. But Metis was not like other beings. She did not die. She lived inside Zeus, her voice winding around his bones, her knowledge spreading through his limbs like wine through a golden cup. She nested in his mind, whispering, growing, watching, and in time, the child she carried began to press against the boundaries of her prison, not with fists, but with thought, with reason, with a power that no father could hold. Zeus began to suffer. At first it was a heaviness in his temples, then a throbbing that shook his very vision. No healing or incantation soothed him. No god could ease his pain. Finally, in desperation, he summoned Hephaestus, the smith of Olympus, god of flame, craft, and the forge. In some tales it was Prometheus, in others Hermes or Pallas, but the most enduring legend names Hephaestus, grim and determined, with a bronze axe forged in the bowels of the earth. At Zeus' command, the smith swung his blade and with one blow split the forehead of the heavenly king, and from the crack, not in blood but in radiance, appeared Athena. She stepped out fully grown, clad in gold and shimmering bronze, her shield polished to the mirror shine of stars, her spear taller than a man, her eyes sharp as tempered steel. She did not cry. She uttered a war cry so pure and strong that the heavens trembled and Olympus itself shuddered. The gods drew back in awe. No one had ever seen such a birth. No one had ever seen a goddess so composed, so cold, so perfect. She was not a child. She was a force. And from that moment she became the beloved daughter of Zeus, not just a reflection of his will, but its sharpening. He let her wear the aegis. He trusted her counsel above all others. She was wisdom and strategy, and unlike her father, she did not yield easily to impulse or anger. She was war, but not fury. She was justice, but not mercy. The olive tree and the spear, the owl and the storm. However, not all his children were born so favored. For another child, born under darker skies and under harsher circumstances, found only rejection. Hephaestus, the god of fire and the forge, lame from birth, was said to have been born of Hera alone. In her rage that Zeus had bore Athena without her, Hera decided to bear a child without his seed. But when she saw the boy with twisted legs and body, she recoiled. Whether she threw him from Olympus out of disgust, or Zeus himself in a rage held the child during a quarrel, no one can say for certain now. But Hephaestus fell. He fell from the golden halls for a whole day and night, crashing into the sea, where Thetis and Eurynome, two kind-hearted sea goddesses, pulled him from the waves and hid him in a cave. There he grew not in bitterness, but in the brilliance of talent. Hephaestus created wonders, golden thrones that moved, automata that walked, jewelry that shimmered like the sun. He sculpted beauty from the flame, and in time, he returned. He sent Hera a gift, a throne more magnificent than any on Olympus, adorned with pearls and silver, with mechanisms so fine they could not be seen. But when she sat, the throne shackled her fast. She could not stand, could not move. The gods implored Hephaestus to free her, but he refused. "I have no mother," he would say. Only after Dionysus found him and plied him with wine, bringing him into a state of joy and numbness, did Hephaestus relent. He returned to Olympus riding a mule crowned with ivy and set her free. Since then, he took his place as the smith of the gods, and they could not do without him. But his bitterness remained. His heart, forged in fire, was not immune to pain. When he was wed to Aphrodite, the most beautiful of all goddesses, it was not love but order that arranged this union, and she betrayed him. She shared a bed with ours. And when Hephaestus learned of this, he wove a net so fine it could not be seen, and cast it over their entwined bodies, exposing them before the gods to shame them in the eyes of Olympus. The gods laughed, for they are cruel and capricious. But Hephaestus did not laugh. He watched, he remembered, and he returned to his forge, where he reforged his sorrow into weapons, where he poured his rage into steel. So it happened that the children of Zeus did not come to him in peace. They appeared as omens, as challenges. Athena, born of prophecy and fear. Hephaestus, exiled and risen despite contempt. They were not sons and daughters in the mortal sense. They were gods, fully formed and crowned with destiny. And Olympus, however golden and eternal it seemed, always echoed with the ring of their stories. The footsteps of war, the hiss of steam, the quiet tread of wisdom, and the soft grind of resentment beneath the marble floors. Athena, born without a mother, from the very skull of Zeus in a burst of thunder unthought, stood apart among all the goddesses of Olympus. She did not crawl, she did not weep, she did not cry out for milk, warmth, or a cradle. She leaped into the world in armor, golden and unyielding, with a spear already clenched in her hand, and a mind blazing in her eyes. Her birth was not a miracle, but a warning, for no god who appears armed and silent can be trusted to simply stand idly by. The Olympians looked upon her with awe, for they knew this was not a goddess of tender love or idle beauty. This was a goddess of judgment and will, of strategy, of city walls, of laws written in flame. In the long halls of Olympus, where jealousy and lust often awakened faster than wisdom, she moved with purpose. Where other gods shouted, laughed, or wept, Athena simply watched. She spoke rarely, but when she did, her words cut through the silence like a blade through silk. Unlike ours, who reveled in the madness of blood and chaos, Athena represented the colder side of war, the one that draws maps and sets traps, the one that builds siege towers and calculates the movements of men like pieces on a painted board. Her domain was generals, not berserkers. When men prayed to her before a battle, they prayed not for fury, but for clarity. They asked for strength in the wall of shields, for unbreakable ranks, for the wisdom to know when to strike and when to wait. She answered those who showed discipline and courage. She did not favor cowards, nor did she indulge recklessness. And when she went out onto the battlefield, and there were times when she did, she moved like a shadow of bronze and wind, guiding the brave, casting down the fools, Her shield shone with the head of the Gorgon, and her feet never touched blood. Her patronage stretched far beyond the limits of war. Athena was the goddess of cities, not only in name, but in soul. She brought order to the chaos of wandering tribes. She gave mortals the first glimpse of what it means to live not as beasts, but as citizens. Architecture, shipbuilding, the loom, the plough, all this, the ancients believed, came from her. She taught crafts and strategy, the weaving of cloth and the weaving of law. Wherever she passed, men began to turn stone into temples, to erect statues not in fear, but in admiration. And among all cities, one became her own. When Cecrops, the first king of a newly emerged city on a rocky headland of Attica, prepared to offer his city to a god, both Poseidon and Athena appeared, each claiming the people. Poseidon, proud and boisterous, struck the ground with his trident, and a spring of salt water burst from the rock. Or, in some versions, a magnificent warhorse, swift, strong, indomitable. But Athena planted an olive tree, its roots going deep and its leaves shimmering silver in the wind. The people saw the gifts and chose the olive, for it gave wood, food, oil, and peace. And the city was named in her honor Athens. She always guarded it, not with fire, but with wisdom and a gaze that missed nothing. In hours of danger, her owl flew over the rooftops. In hours of glory, her statues towered over its walls. Even when wars came and kings fell, Athens remained hers. But, like all gods, Athena was not without pride. She tolerated no rivals, especially among mortals who dared to imitate her brilliance. There once lived a girl, a Lydian named Arachne, whose skill in weaving was so fine that no pattern could equal it. No thread ever broke under her fingers. When neighbors whispered that perhaps Athena herself had taught her, Arachne gave a mocking snort. She declared that the goddess had nothing to do with her art, that her skill belonged to her alone. When Athena heard this, she descended not in a storm or rage, but in the guise of an old woman with tired eyes, and warned Arachne to be humble. But Arachne refused. She challenged the goddess to a contest. Athena cast off her disguise, and both of them set to weaving. The goddess wove the glory of Olympus, the justice of the gods, the recklessness of those who dared to oppose them. Arachne, with her mortal hands, wove the sins of the gods. Zeus taking the form of a swan, a bull, a golden shower, taking mortal women by guile and force. When they finished, both tapestries were perfect. But it was the truth in Arachne's work that stung the most, and Athena, humiliated by mortal craft and mortal daring, struck the loom and tore the threads. Arachne, broken by shame and terror, tried to take her own life. But Athena stopped her and instead turned her into a spider, destined to weave further in silence. Her skill remained, but her form was distorted. This was not mercy. This was judgment. She was not a goddess of love or forgiveness. Unlike Aphrodite, she did not flirt. Unlike Hera, she did not rage in jealousy. Athena remained forever a virgin, not out of chastity, but out of self-control. No man, no god, no titan ever laid claim to her. Even Hephaestus, when he tried to possess her by force in a fit of madness, failed. His seed spilled onto the earth, and from it was born Erycthonius, the serpent-born king of Athens, whom Athena took and raised in secret. She had no children of her own, for she was the mother of wisdom itself, and wisdom needs no lineage. She stood beside her father during the great councils. She guided Perseus to kill the Gorgon, lending him her shield. She led Odysseus home when Poseidon tried to drown him. She stood beside Heracles and gave him the strength to bear his labors. She was never warm. She was never cruel. She was something deeper. The coldness of reason, the silence of judgment, the resolve of law. On Olympus, in the halls of Athena, it was quiet. No laughter rang there. No lovers waited outside her doors. But when the gods argued, when Zeus wavered, when the world balanced on the edge of chaos, it was Athena who spoke, and everyone listened. Even Ars, the blood-drunk god of war, learned to stay his hand when she stepped forward with her spear and eyes like wrought iron. For from Athena there was no escape, no refuge from her gaze. She saw not only what is, but what must be. And when she moved, the world moved with her. Where Athena walked in silence and light, with a spear sharp from thought and knowledge, Ars thundered across the battlefield in a madness of blood and flame. He was not strategy. He was not wisdom. He was war in its rawest and most brutal form. The cry of a dying horse, the crunch of bones under iron, the sound of fire crackling in a broken palisade. Ars, son of Zeus and Hera, was born of two thrones and yet belonged to neither. From the moment he entered the world, clad not in armor but in violence, the gods looked upon him with unease. Even his father, the king of the heavens, harbored little love for the child. For Ars did not obey, did not negotiate, did not calculate. He lived for conflict, and conflict followed him like a faithful dog. Unlike Athena, whose clarity made men better, Ars sowed chaos. He strode into battle not to guide mortals, but to revel in their madness. Where he passed, men forgot their formation. Brothers went against brothers. Wounds festered, shields broke, mercy withered. He did not reward honor. He did not punish cowardice. For Ars, the only thing that mattered was the clash, the scream, the touch of a blade to flesh. His armor was always stained, his voice always hoarse. His chariots, drawn by horses with blooded foam at their mouths, carried him into every war, with a smirk on his lips and eyes burning with a thirst for destruction. He did not march alone. Beside him ran his children, Phobos, god of fear, whispering panic into the hearts of armies, and Deimos, god of dread, making even the brave forget their names. With them came Enyo, the goddess of battle herself, clad in crimson and flame, her hands always wet with blood. Wherever Ars rode, they followed him, a family of shadows casting long streaks across the land, turning every campaign into a slaughterhouse. The Greeks feared him more than they revered him. They built him few temples, dedicated him few songs. For to worship Ars meant not to seek protection. It meant to implore that he pass by. And yet, for all his brutality, Ars was not a simple god. He could love, though his love was poisonous. He could be wounded, though his wounds were rare. He could rage fiercely, not out of pride, but out of humiliation. And it was in matters of the heart that he was most often cast down. For despite his strength and splendor, Ars was not the most beautiful of the gods. That title belonged to Aphrodite, the goddess of love and pleasure. Born from the sea foam and the severed parts of Uranus, she was golden, radiant, and cold as polished marble. And Ars loved her not with the desperate longing of mortals, but with a hunger that could not be satisfied. She was the wife of Hephaestus, the smith, lame, cast down from Olympus by his own mother, and returned only for his unsurpassed talent. It was a marriage of necessity, not desire. Aphrodite turned to Ars, and together they lay in secret, tangled in sheets of fire and silk, their bodies entwined in pleasure and danger. But the gods see everything, and Hephaestus, patient and cunning, fashioned a net so fine that no eye could catch it and no hand could break it. He cast it over them while they were in each other's arms, and he called the gods to witness their shame. Bound and displayed, Ars and Aphrodite became a legend told with laughter and warning. The gods mocked them. Only Poseidon offered to pay the ransom that would free them. Hephaestus agreed. Ars fled Olympus in dishonor, but the sting of humiliation did not cool his blood. He returned to war. He threw himself into battles with even greater fury, as if every slain warrior could erase the memory of his shame. And yet the world remembered. Poets sang of Ars not as a hero, but as an element. During the Trojan War, he took the side of the Trojans, drawn by blood and beauty. His own son, Ascalaphus, fought and died in the ranks of the Greeks. Ars wept, it is said, but grief did not soften him. He burst onto the battlefield only to be struck down by Diomedes, a mortal favored by Athena. With the help of the goddess, Diomedes wounded Ars with a spear. and the god screamed in agony so loudly that the battlefield shook. He fled to Olympus, clutching his wound, and complained to Zeus like a wounded child. But Zeus, weary of ours and his endless thirst for strife, offered no comfort. He called him the most hateful of all his children. Nevertheless, ours endured, for war never ends. Cities fall, kings rise to power, banners change, but ours remains. In every cry of rage, in every knife turned in the dark, in every military camp where a fire smokes and soldiers sharpen swords with trembling hands, ours is there. Not noble, not wise, but necessary, for humanity has never known peace for long. And as long as they wage wars, the god of bloodshed will ride ahead. Perhaps he is hated, perhaps he is cursed, but even the gods cannot turn away from war, and ours, robed in scarlet and iron, marches eternally forward, crowned not with laurels, but with the silence that follows the slaughter. At the time when Zeus ruled supreme from his golden throne, and Olympus buzzed with the whispers of fate and ambition, a pair of twins came into the world, destined to define the rhythm of life for gods and men. They were born not in high halls of clouds and marble, but far away, on the hidden island of Delos, where sea winds whispered in laurel groves, and the earth trembled with the breath of prophecy. Their mother was Leto, daughter of the Titans Cuus and Phoebe, and once a companion of Zeus in the earliest days of his power. But her womb, heavy with the children of a god, became the subject of divine contempt and persecution. Hera, eternally jealous and watchful, unleashed her wrath upon the whole earth. She forbade any firmament under the light of the sun to give shelter to Leto. Every city, every island, every peak and valley turned away from her. She wandered for many days under the gaze of a vengeful sky, swollen with life and hunted like prey. Even rivers dried up where she knelt, and the beasts of the earth moved out of her path. And so she came to Delos, a floating island belonging neither to land nor sea, a place that swayed on the waves and had no anchor in the mortal world. There the island opened to her. There, under a twilight sky, Leto gave birth. First came Artemis, silent and silver-eyed, the goddess of the hunt, wild places, and moonlight. Then appeared Apollo, and with his arrival came a cry of prophecy, loud and piercing. The sun shone brighter that day, the waves grew calm, and the island, long a wanderer, struck its roots into the sea. Even the fates paused to listen to the child's cry, for they knew that this god, though newborn, would not wish to dwell in shadow or silence. He would seek dominion. He would speak with a voice of truth and flame. Apollo grew rapidly, as is often the case with gods, not in years, but in presence. He required no time to find his place in the cosmos. From the moment he first picked up a bow, he had no equal. He could strike a sparrow in flight in the sky or split a pine tree from a mile away. But his bow was not only an instrument of death, it was an instrument of justice. And when he learned of Python, the monstrous serpent guarding the ancient sanctuary of Gaia at Delphi, he knew what he must do. Python, born of the earth, was not merely a beast. He was ancient magic, a chthonic entity called in centuries of knowledge. But he was also the embodiment of Hera's wrath, sent to torment Leto during her flight. Apollo, though young, tolerated no insults. With arrows of gold and thoughts as bright as the rising dawn, he descended to Delphi and slew the serpent. Blood sprinkled the stones for 7 days. The earth mourned, but Apollo erected his temple on that very spot, claiming it not for the sake of conquest, but for the sake of transformation. From then on, Delphi became his residence, his mouthpiece, his beating heart. The oracle rose from the steaming fissures of the mountain. A woman, touched by the breath of a god, shuddered in visions that turned her voice into riddles. Kings traveled for weeks to hear her speak. Warriors knelt, priests wept. She sat on her tripod, her face hidden by a veil, her eyes not seeing the earthly, and from her lips fell words that were not her own. Apollo spoke not through fire or rage, but through vision. His light blinded softly, his truths were impossible to escape. He was the god of reason, balance, poetry, music, and order. Where Dionysus led to madness, Apollo led to harmony. And yet Apollo was not always mild. Insulted, he struck with utmost precision. When Coonus, a mortal woman carrying his child, was unfaithful to him with another, Apollo's rage was swift. He killed her not with a sword, but with knowledge. He sent his sister Artemis to perform the deed, and the arrow that pierced Cronus's chest was cold and silent. But before her body was consumed by flame, Apollo snatched the child from her womb. This child was Asclepius, the god of healing, who would one day raise the dead and be struck down for breaking the boundary between life and death. Apollo loved fiercely, but did not forgive easily. He walked the world in many guises, as a shepherd tending the flocks of mortal kings, as the bringer of plague, whose arrows are invisible and deadly. His anger brought death to those who challenged him. As the patron of the arts, he taught Orpheus to charm stones and trees. He led the muses, inspired the verses of Homer, and played his lyre so that the stars seemed to dance in their constellations. But for all his beauty and order, Apollo was not immune to failure. When he loved, his love was tragic. His heart sought what it could not hold. The nymph Daphne fled from him, calling upon her father, a river god, to save her. He turned her into a laurel tree. Her skin turned to bark at the very moment Apollo reached out to touch her. And then he began to wear her leaves as a crown, a symbol not of triumph, but of eternal longing. Apollo ruled the day, driving the chariot of the sun in later tales, guiding its path across the sky. He drove away the darkness. He established laws. He saw everything in its true light. And yet, even he could not stop the turning of fate. Although the gods live long, their stories stretch through shadow and light. And Apollo, for all his radiance, would one day have to face a sorrow deeper than any wound. But that story was still to come. For now he stood tall, golden, and terrifying in his beauty, the archer of Olympus, the seer of truths, the god who brought order to chaos and music to silence. People built temples in his honor. Kings made oaths at his altar. And somewhere beneath the mountain at Delphi, the ancient bones of Python still dreamed in the depths, waiting for the world to change again. Before temples were erected, before the names of gods were carved in marble, and before man dared to measure the world with lines and laws, there was the world. It stretched without borders, thick with shadows and the scent of laurel and pine. In those forests there were no kings, no armies, no thrones, only the rustle of beasts, the howl of the wind, and the whisper of water under the moon. And it was there that Artemis ruled, not from a stone palace, but from the forest thickets and from the peaks of untamed mountains. She was born in silence, appearing first on the island of Delos. Her mother Leto was still in labor, her womb heavy with the second child. They say Artemis helped her brother enter this world, becoming the midwife to the god who would one day rule the sun. From that moment, she became not just his twin, but his mirror, not opposite in essence, but different in nature. Where he established order, she preserved freedom. Where he spoke in riddles and reason, she moved by instinct and silence. And while Apollo shone by day, Artemis became the quiet flame of the moon, cold, distant, and eternal. Artemis claimed her place in the cosmos early. While still a child, she approached her father Zeus with a clarity that many gods 3 times her age did not possess. She did not entreat. She did not smile. She asked for a bow and arrows like her brothers, a retinue of nymphs for hunting, and an eternal vow of virginity, so as never to be bound to a man, never to bear children, never to know the bonds of hearth or marriage. She asked for the mountains and wild places as her domain, that they might remain ungoverned and uncorrupted. Zeus, perhaps surprised and perhaps delighted, granted all she asked without any conditions. From that moment, Artemis became the mistress of the world. She was a hunter, a protector of animals, the patroness of young maidens who had not yet known men, and a high avenger for anyone who dared to encroach upon her sacred groves. She moved through the forests robed in silver. Her bow was always drawn, her eyes sharper than the wolves that followed close at her heels. She did not walk. She glided. She spoke little. Her voice was the wind in the foliage or the sharp whistle of an arrow. Mortals feared her as much as they revered her. For Artemis was not soft. She had no patience for those who forgot their place. Niobe, the queen of Thebes, once mocked Leto for bearing only 2 children, while Niobe herself boasted of her offspring of 14 souls. In her arrogance, she laughed at the goddess. Artemis did not answer with words. She descended from the mountains with her brother, and together they struck down Niobe's children. Apollo took the sons, Artemis the daughters. The earth that day drank deeply of royal blood. Niobe fled to Mount Sipylus and wept until the gods, weary of her cries, turned her into stone. But even in stone, the tears did not stop flowing. Such was the revenge of the twins. Artemis guarded her purity with steel. There once lived a man named Actaeon, a hunter like herself, brave and boastful, who once at twilight wandered into her sacred grove. He came not with malice, not for the sake of mockery, but only to drink and rest. But he saw what no man is destined to see, a goddess without clothes, her skin pale and pure, her form untouched by time or desire. She saw him. He froze, and with a single look, she turned him into a deer. Confused, seized by terror, Actaeon rushed into the forest. His limbs no longer belonged to him, but his fate was already decided. His own hounds, not recognizing their master, tracked him down and tore him to pieces. In the forest, it became quiet again, and the lesson remained unspoken. And yet Artemis was not the embodiment of cruelty. She was justice, if not mercy. She healed as often as she wounded. She oversaw childbirth, however paradoxical that might seem for a virgin goddess. Perhaps because she was a witness to her own mother's labor. Perhaps because birth, like the moon, is a cycle of pain and light. Whatever the reason, women called out to her in birth pangs, offering her honey and garlands of herbs, hoping she would soften her gaze just enough for the child to remain alive. Sometimes she did, sometimes she did not. Legends of Artemis are many, and not all of them end in death. She protected Iphigenia, the daughter of Agamemnon, who was to be sacrificed so that the Greek ships could set sail for Troy. At the last moment, Artemis snatched the girl away, leaving a doe in her place, and carried Iphigenia across the sea to serve her as a priestess. But first, she herself had demanded this sacrifice, for Agamemnon had once killed one of her sacred deer and boasted of it. No insult was forgotten. No oath was given for nothing. The whole world was under her protection, and to protect it, she became as hard as the stones beneath her feet. She did not marry. She did not yield. The great hunter Orion once walked beside her, perhaps as a companion, perhaps as a lover. Some say he tried to possess her. Others say he only sought her company. But in every tale, he died, whether he was struck down by Artemis's own arrow, or by a cunning trick of Apollo, or by the sting of a giant scorpion sent to guard her solitude. The result was the same. Afterward, she placed him in the sky among the stars. But she did not weep. Artemis remains one of the most formidable and least understood among the Olympians. No temple can contain her. No statue can convey the coldness in her gaze. She is the goddess of the in-between, not of death, but of what comes right before it. Not of love, but of its untouched shadow. She rules the night, but not in dreams. She rules the forests, but not for their beauty. She exists by herself, and the world revolves around her. She is the moon over a battlefield, the silence before the flight of an arrow, a shadow glimpsed in the forest that never fully reveals itself. And even now, in every rustle of a grove and in every silvery glint in the night sky, she is still watching. Before Olympus triumphed, before the sons of Cronus overthrew their father and divided the cosmos among themselves, the world was created by more ancient hands, and its gods were even more cruel. Sky and earth were once locked in an embrace, when Uranus stretched over Gaia like a shroud of stars. But Uranus feared the children Gaia bore him those strange and monstrous offspring that were like neither mortals nor even gods, and he buried them in the depths of the earth, deep beneath her skin. In her pain and rage, Gaia devised a plan. She crafted a sickle from flint and placed it in the hands of her youngest Titan son, Cronus, who took it and lay in wait. When Uranus descended again to press against the earth, Cronus rose and struck. The blade flashed through flesh and sky. Blood rained down upon the soil, but the severed parts, thrown behind his back, fell into the sea. There, among the surging waves and blood-dark foam, something began to stir. The sea hissed and swirled. From its depths rose a woman, fully formed, a being of such an earthly beauty that even the gods froze, watching. Her hair flowed like golden river reeds. Her skin shimmered like pearls. Where her feet touched the surf, flowers bloomed from the salt. She stepped ashore on the island of Cythera, or perhaps on Cyprus at Tales Vary. But in each of them, she was radiant and impossible. She was named Aphrodite, the one born from foam. And she walked not with thunder or fire, but with the unbearable agony of desire. From her, the world learned to long. She was older than the Olympians, though she took her place among them. Zeus gave her to Hephaestus, thinking to tame her with loyalty and craft. But Aphrodite was no stone wife. She belonged to no one. Her beauty was not meant for shackles. She wandered free. Her eyes were eternally half-closed. Her laughter was sharp and soft at the same time. The gods craved her. Mortals worshipped her. And wherever she went, the air became heavy. She did not wield a sword. She did not hurl lightning. Her power was subtler and deeper. It slipped under armor. It crept into the heart. It perverted oaths and crushed kingdoms. No fortress could keep her out. No oath could hold her. Her love was not always kind. For all her grace, Aphrodite was no gentle muse. She was revenge robed in silk. When mortals dared to compare their beauty with hers, they suffered. When women claimed they were fairer, she answered with curses. When Hippolytus scorned love itself, preferring chastity in the hunt, she ignited in his steve-mother's heart a flame of passion for him, and from that fire came destruction. When she favored a man, the gift was as dangerous as any curse. Anchises, a shepherd prince, caught her eye, and she descended to him in the guise of a mortal maiden. When he lay with her and later learned the truth, he trembled with fear. She bore him a son, Aeneas, who would carry the fate of a dying city on his shoulders. But Aphrodite never returned to him. Her longest liaison was with Ars, the god of war, beauty and blood, pleasure and rage. They were opposites, and they were alike. She met him not in the softness of bedrooms, but in the fierce silence after a battle. They lay together under golden nets, under the gaze of Olympus, and despite the mockery that followed, they did not part. She bore him children, Phobos and Deimos, terror and fear, who rode beside their father in battle. She also bore Harmonia, the goddess of concord. As if from this union of war and love some balance could be born, however brief. But Aphrodite's greatest legacy was not in the bed, nor on the battlefield. It was in the story that ignited the greatest war of myths. For it was she who promised Helen to Paris, the prince of Troy, in exchange for recognizing her as the fairest of goddesses. The judgment of Paris was not a game. Hera offered power. Athena offered wisdom and victory. But Aphrodite offered love, and it proved stronger than kingdoms. Paris chose her, and thereby doomed his city. Helen, the wife of Menelaus, was abducted, and the Greeks set sail for Troy with fire in their hearts. 10 years of blood followed. Achilles and Hector fell. Priam mourned his sons, and all because Aphrodite whispered in the prince's ear and smiled. Even among the gods, she was feared, not for might, not for wisdom, but for the madness she could inspire. She could make gods crawl. She could make kings grovel. She could turn brother against brother, father against son with a single look. Her magic girdle, the cestus, granted irresistible charm to anyone who wore it. Even Hera once borrowed it for her intrigues, to distract Zeus. But Aphrodite herself needed no trinkets. Her mere presence was enough to break the will. She was not cruel for the sake of cruelty, but she was not merciful. She did not love with patience. She did not nurture. She consumed. And yet the world worshipped her. Temples were erected across all the islands. Statues of smooth marble stood in her honor. With eyes cast down in longing, men and women burned incense at her altars, not out of fear, but out of hope. For who among mortals does not long for love, even knowing its price? Aphrodite, born from a wound of the sky, carried within her the contradiction of all creation. That beauty is both a blessing and a burden. That love can build kingdoms and destroy them in the blink of an eye. That desire obeys neither law, nor wisdom, nor even war. She often smiled. She rarely wept. And in every heart that has ever longed for another, in every look that has lingered too long, in every poem written by firelight, she continues to live. Among all the gods who sat on Olympus, robed in glory and crowned with beauty, none bore more scars. No one carried a heavier silence than Hephaestus. He was the god of the forge, the creator of divine will embodied in iron and gold. And yet he came into the world not with songs and feasting, but with rejection. In the oldest legends, he was cast from the heavens by his mother Hera, who, seeing her son with twisted legs and body, recoiled with such horror that she hurled him from Olympus before he could even scream. He fell for a day and a night, tumbling through clouds and wind, until the sea received him. There, beneath the waves, he was pulled from the water by Thetis and Eurynome, to see goddesses who raised him in secret, far from the laughter of his kin, far from the golden spires and the feasts of the immortals. The boy who fell became the man who builds, in the deep caves of the sea, among fire-warm stones and singing currents. Hephaestus learned to master the craft of fire. With hammer and anvil, he forged wonders. Metal bent at his will. Flame danced for him like a faithful servant. His hands, though not graceful, grew strong, and in the echoing gloom, he created things that had never existed before. Mechanical women of bronze, living tools of gold, chains so fine they could not be seen. His work was not born of joy. It was born of silence, of exile, of the long bitterness that ripens in the heart of the forgotten. He sent his mother, Hera, a gift, a throne more magnificent than any other in the halls of Olympus, adorned with silver vines and golden beasts that shimmered in the light. But when she sat upon it, the trap snapped shut. She could not rise. The throne shackled her, gripped her like the very judgments she had once passed without thought. The gods begged Hephaestus to release her. They came in turn with flattery, threats, and bribes, but he refused them all. He had known the cold embrace of the sea. He had heard the laughter of dolphins where a father's voice should have sounded. He would not come unless he was brought. And it was Dionysus, the eternally smiling wonder, who succeeded. He did not argue. He did not entreat. He found Hephaestus, offered him wine, and drank with him deep into the night. By dawn, the smith returned to Olympus riding a mule, drunk but unbowed, with a hammer at his back. He freed Hera, not out of submission, but in triumph. And from that day, he took his place among the immortals. And yet, even in the shining halls of Olympus, Hephaestus never felt truly at ease. He was given a wife, the fairest of all goddesses, Aphrodite, radiant and cold as starlight. It was a marriage of arrangement, not of love. Beauty paired with deformity, love chained to labor. She was unfaithful, as many whispered. Her connection with Mars, bold and reckless, humiliated Hephaestus before the entire pantheon. But he did not rage as Mars would have. He did not scream as Poseidon might. He built a trap net so fine it was invisible, woven from threads that no mortal would ever see, and cast it over the lovers while they slept. Then he summoned the gods, not in fury, but for the sake of the spectacle, and exposed the lovers naked in full view of all Olympus. The gods rolled with laughter. They mocked and jeered. But Hephaestus did not smile. He stood beside them, silent, and the fire in his forge that day burned low and cold. He released them when Poseidon offered payment, not because he needed the gold, but because even revenge could not bring peace. Nevertheless, the forge was his domain. No other god could match him in skill. He built the palaces of Olympus. He forged the aegis for Zeus, a shield that shone like the sun and shook the world with its strike. He created the winged helm and sandals of Hermes, the indestructible armor of Achilles, and the golden chariot of Helios. He carved thrones that moved on their own, doors that opened for no one but their master, and automatons that could walk and talk like men. His hands, though covered in scars, were more divine than any voice. His forge was not only the beating heart of Olympus, it was its memory, its legacy, its armor. And yet, he was always alone. In later tales, Hephaestus took his revenge more quietly. He created Pandora, the first mortal woman, by order of the gods, molded from clay and spirit, blessed with gifts from each of the Olympians. She was beautiful beyond measure, but Hephaestus, who gave her form and breath, knew what she would carry within. She was not a blessing. She was a vessel, a punishment wrapped in gold. When she opened the vessel, not a box, as poets later called it, the world changed. Disease, sorrow, madness, and death poured out. Inside remained only hope, trembling and invisible. It was his hand that shaped her. It was his will that obeyed the decree. But perhaps it was also his bitterness that whispered how to make her eyes to trusting, and her hands to impatience. Hephaestus was never revered for beauty. He was celebrated in fire, in anvils, in the ring of hammers on steel. The people of Lemnos, where he is said to have landed after his fall, erected shrines in his name. Volcanic heat was called his breath. Sparks flying from the mountain were his laughter. He was not adored like Apollo. He was not feared like Hades. But when mortals needed weapons, when kings needed thrones, when cities rose from the dust, they prayed to the god with the limp and the flame. He remained in his forge, always working, always watching. While others feasted and plotted, he built. While others danced and drank, he cast molten bronze. And though the gods might forget him in the songs they sang, they could not do without him. For every victory, every monument, every sacred weapon carried the echo of his fire. And in the end, perhaps that was enough. Hephaestus, their outcast, the creator, the betrayed, forged not only metal, but Olympus itself. He wore no crowns, but he created them all. On the day Hermes was born, the wind changed. It was not a great storm or a divine portent, but a quiet change, a trickle of air swirling where it had not been before. Maia, one of the Pleiades, lived in a cave on Mount Cyllene, far from Olympus. Shrouded in solitude and shadow, she bore the child of Zeus in silence, without the noise that usually accompanied the birth of gods. But her son was not a creature of stillness. He entered the world with eyes open, already watching, already plotting. Before the first twilight of his life had descended, Hermes slipped from his swaddling clothes and set out into the world. As if the mountain could not hold him, and the cradle was never intended for his shackles, he would become the god of boundaries and began his life by crossing one. That same evening, the divine infant reached Thessaly, where the sacred cows of Apollo grazed under the sun. Hermes looked at them not with reverence, but with mischief. He stole them, hiding their tracks. He crafted sandals for their hooves and led them backward. The trick was so clever that even far-sighted Apollo could not track the path. He killed two, offered a sacrifice to himself, and returned to the cave before dawn, lying back down like a helpless infant, closing his eyes in feigned ignorance. But the truth of Olympus is such that nothing stays hidden for long. Apollo came, radiant and furious, dragging the child to Zeus to demand justice. And there, in the throne room of the gods, Hermes spoke for the first time, not with a plea, but in verse. With the same breath by which he admitted the theft, he wove tall tales, sang songs, and laughed at his own audacity. Even Apollo, whose anger could make rivers boil, could not help but smile. Zeus saw himself in the boy. He heard in Hermes's voice an echo of his own youthful cunning, and in the boy's smirk, a spark of something far more dangerous than brute force, intelligence unconstrained by conscience. Instead of punishing him, Zeus embraced him. He made him the messenger of the gods, gave him the golden staff called the caduceus, and charged him to walk freely between the worlds of gods, mortals, and the dead. From that moment, Hermes bore many names. He was Argyphontes, the one who slew Argus, the 100-eyed guardian, by lulling him with stories and songs before drawing a blade. He was the Psychopomp, the guide of souls, who led the dead to the underworld not with fear, but with peace. He was the keeper of travelers, thieves, merchants, and messengers. Everywhere there were crossroads, Hermes stood in the center. He was not powerful like Zeus. He was not golden like Apollo. He was not solemn like Hades. But Hermes moved faster than any of them. His winged sandals barely touched the ground, and his mind moved faster still. When Hera sought to torment Io, Zeus' mortal lover, by placing her under the sleepless watch of Argus, it was Hermes who came to her aid. With stories sweet as honey and music soft as wine, he put Argus to sleep with a blade in hand. His dagger was quick, but his wit even quicker. After death, the eyes of Argus were set into the feathers of Hera's peacock, becoming a bitter tribute. Hermes walked not only in shadows, he brought inventions. He created the first lyre from a tortoise shell, gut, and ingenuity, and gave it to Apollo as a sign of reconciliation. He gave humanity weights and measures, coinage and trade, speech and calculation, and yet he remained forever unreliable. He lied as easily as he breathed. He deceived not out of need, but for pleasure. Yet even in his deceptions, genius flickered. He was the god of the spaces between, where chaos and order met in a handshake or a clash of blades. In battle, he carried Zeus' messages across fields of blood and glory. It was Hermes who whispered commands into the ears of kings, lifted dying warriors from the dust, and carried them unseen from the field of slaughter. During the Trojan War, it was Hermes who led Priam to the Greek camp, cloaking him in divine mist so he could plead for Hector's body. Even Achilles, roaring and angry, could not deny the solemnity of that moment. Hermes stood behind the old king like a shadow, watching, silent, witnessing. He did not often appear in the tales of war, but he was always there between every word, every pause, every unspoken oath. He had many lovers, though few were sung of in temples. His son, Pan, born of a nymph, was the god of the wilderness, madness, pipes, and panic, goat-legged and howling. Some said he fathered Hermaphroditus, the child of Aphrodite, who combined male and female essence. Being dual in form, Hermes did not love constantly. He loved in moments, in flashes, in games under the moon. Temples of Hermes rose on borders and at gates, at crossroads and marketplaces, in places where decisions were made and fates changed. Travelers offered him heaps of stones to mark a safe path. Thieves whispered his name before a theft. Merchants carved his image on their scales, and the dying, as they breathed their last, hoped to see him not in anger, but in mercy, so that their souls would be carried away not by gloom, but by a figure who smiles even at the end. For all his cunning, Hermes was never cruel. He was not a god of justice, but he played fair in his own way. He balanced the weight of the world between trickery and truth, lies and law. He was that boundary that made movement possible. And while the world turned, while cities rose and fell, while armies marched and ships sank, Hermes walked invisible, smiling to himself, eternally moving between what was, what is, and what could be. Before the wars in the heavens, before the forging of thunder and the clash of titans, before the 12 gods ascended Olympus, there was Hestia. She was the eldest daughter of Cronus and Rhea, the firstborn of that ancient line. And she came into the world quietly, her cry soft and short. Her father swallowed her whole, as he did each of his children, fearing the prophecy that one of them would overthrow him. In the womb of Cronus, she waited in the darkness with her brothers and sisters. Her flame grew quiet, but it did not go out. When Zeus rose and fulfilled the ancient sentence, he cut open the womb of the old god and brought his brothers and sisters out into the light again. Hestia was released last, though she had been taken first. But she held no grudge. She emerged not in rage, but in peace, as if her long imprisonment had only deepened her silence. And from that moment she asked for little. While her brothers sought power over the sea and sky, and her sisters turned their gaze to wisdom and harvest, Hestia chose the hearth. She asked Zeus for no temples, no golden chariot, no armies in her name. She desired only to keep the flame that warmed the home, lit the meal, marked the center of every house and city. She became the goddess of the hearth. And in this small, modest choice, she found power deeper than any lightning bolt. For when storms rage and empires crumble, the hearth remains. It is the first fire lit in the morning and the last to go out at night. It is the circle where the family gathers, where sacrifices are made, where the gods are fed, and where oaths are sworn. In every house where offerings were made, Hestia received the first and the last portion, for she was the beginning and the end of every rite. Her presence was not spectacular. There are no great battles described in her honor, no lovers, betrayals, monstrous offspring, or terrible revenge. She did not enter the war, nor descend into the underworld. She remained always. And in this silence, she held the world together. While the other Olympians quarreled, seduced, plotted, and spilled blood upon the earth, Hestia maintained the fire that gave warmth to Olympus. It was she who maintained the life of the sacred flame in every city. In Rome, she would be called Vesta, and her priestesses would guard the eternal fire under penalty of death. In Greece, her altars never grew cold. Even when a new city was founded, the settlers carried a brand from Hestia's sacred flame to light the hearth in the new land. Without her, there was no home, no polis, no beginning. Although she was courted by such mighty gods as Poseidon and Apollo, she rejected them both with quiet grace. She asked Zeus to let her remain forever a maiden, untouched and belonging to no one. He granted her this, and in return, she did not take a seat in the council of Olympians. She gave up her place to Dionysus, the youngest god, bringer of madness and the vine. She did not weep over this loss. She had no need for thrones or titles. Her strength was not in hierarchy, but in necessity. While others thundered in marble temples, Hestia hid in the smallest flame of the poorest house, in the soft breath of warmth on a child's cheek, in the smoke curling from a shepherd's meal on a cold mountain. She was worshipped in silence, not in songs. There are few legends about her, and yet she is present in every story. When Odysseus returned home, he returned to the hearth blessed by Hestia. When the halls of Agamemnon were torn by murder and revenge, the light of the hearth was the first thing to dim. When cities rose in conquest, their laws were sworn beside her flame. When lovers entered into marriage, they touched her fire for luck. And in the hours before dawn, when no other god stirred, she kept watch over the sleeping world, as she had always done. Poets found little drama in her. They passed over her name in favor of battles and seductions. But the wise remembered, a house becomes a home only when the hearth is lit. The hearth is what remains when everything else goes. A kingdom without a throne may yet stand, but a house without a hearth is a ruin. And Hestia, the eldest and the youngest, forgotten and remembered, was never absent. In the end, she stood alone not because she was exiled or driven away, but because she chose solitude. And in this solitude, she was loved not with passion or fear, but with reverence. For every fire sparked in her honor, for every offering thrown into the flames, her name lived on. She was the goddess of warmth, safety, the return. When people lost everything and returned to the ashes, it was Hestia's breath that made the first smoke stream upward again. She needed no myths. She was the quiet truth lying at the heart of them all. Among the Olympians were gods of the sky and gods of the sea, gods of war, fire, and wine. But only one goddess whose sorrow could wither the earth, whose grief could turn abundance into dust. Demeter, daughter of Cronus and Rhea, was the goddess of grain, the harvest, cultivated fields, and golden ears of corn. She was not robed in jewels or crowned with light. Her hands were calloused. Her skin bore the scent of soil and wind. She wore the green cloak of spring and walked barefoot through the furrows of the earth. Mortals loved her, not out of terror, but out of gratitude. She gave them bread. She taught them to plant and to reap. Without her, kings starved like beggars, and cities cracked like husks. And yet Demeter's heart, though it was wide as the plains of Arcadia, was ruled by one love above all, the love for her daughter. Persephone was born of Zeus, beautiful as a new flower, laughing as she danced among meadows and rivers, untouched by shadow, her footsteps light as petals. She was the joy and mirror of her mother, and Demeter never let her far out of her sight. The gods watched her grow. Even Hades, grim and silent in his underground kingdom, watched her. His heart, which had never known longing, stirred at the sight of her youth. He said nothing to Demeter. He did not seek a blessing. He rose from the underworld in a chariot as black as pitch, drawn by horses whose breath smoked like fire, and seized the maiden as she was gathering flowers in the valley of Nysa. The earth opened up, the meadow split, and by the time her companions screamed, Persephone was gone. Demeter searched throughout the world. She walked through the fields she had once blessed, her hair disheveled, her garments torn, her voice hoarse from shouting. For 9 days and nights he wandered without food or sleep, carrying torches in both hands. Even the gods did not dare to speak to her, for her grief was a storm without lightning, a silence more terrible than rage. Finally, she came to the house of Hecate, who had heard the girl's cry, and together they turned to Helios, the all-seeing sun. It was he who revealed the truth, that Hades had taken her and that Zeus, the father and king, had given his silent consent. Demeter turned away from Olympus. She cast off her divinity and walked the earth as a mortal. She came to Eleusis, where she sat by a well, covered in a cloak and unrecognizable. The daughters of King Chelius found her there and brought her to their mother, who received the strange woman into her house. Demeter nursed the queen's son, Demophoon, and secretly tried to make him immortal by placing him in the fire each night, to burn away his mortal weakness. But the queen saw this and screamed. The ritual was interrupted. Demeter revealed herself to them not in anger, but in sorrow, and in her grief. She cursed the earth. Nothing grew. The grain rotted in the field. Trees bore no fruit. Rivers ran slow and silted. Famine crept across the world like a shadow, and the smoke of dying hearths rose to Olympus. Men and women prayed not for mercy, but for survival. And finally, Zeus relented. He sent Hermes down to the underworld to bring the girl back. Hades did not fight. He spoke softly, in the voice of a husband who knew he had done what could not be undone. He offered Persephone a throne beside his own. She did not weep. She did not scream, but her silence hardened like the roots of old trees. And before leaving, she took from him one fruit, a pomegranate, blood red and bitter. She ate 6 seeds. Thus Persephone returned to the world above, and the fields wept with joy. Demeter rushed to her daughter, embraced her as if she could never let her go. But the fates do not forget. Because she had tasted the food of the dead, Persephone could not stay. 6 months of the year she would walk under the sun, and flowers would bloom in her footsteps. But for another 6 months, she would return to the realm of shadows as queen not abducted, but enthroned, and the earth would mourn. In her sorrow, Demeter withholds her gifts. The winds grow cold. The trees shed their leaves. The fields are covered with frost. And thus seasons came into the world not by decree, but by love, lost and found over and over again. Demeter accepted this arrangement, though her heart never healed. She founded the Eleusinian mysteries, rites so sacred and secret that even poets did not dare to write them down. They promised a glimpse of Persephone's path, a hope of rebirth, a whisper that death is not the end. Mortals came from all lands to walk the sacred road and be initiated into her mysteries. They fasted, prayed, and wept. And in the darkness, they saw something brighter: memory, a promise, a mother's fire. Demeter was not often seen on Olympus. She kept to the fields, the temples where fires were lit and bread was broken. She was not a queen of thunder or tide. But when people ate, they called her name first. And when the snow fell and the harvest died, they knew. It was because a mother waits for her child to rise from the darkness again. Persephone was not born for the darkness. She came into the world under the gaze of Demeter. Her mother's laughter was woven into her breath. Her skin was the color of ripened grain. Her name was Kori, the maiden, the spring flower. In the meadows of the mortal world, she danced, untouched by age or grief. And wherever her feet touched the grass, wildflowers broke through the soil. She knew no sorrow, for her mother shielded her from it. She was the daughter of growth, golden fields, and clear skies. And yet neither god nor mortal can escape the shadow that waits underground. The world was not made of light alone. Under the root, there is always a door. Under the song, there is always silence. It was in one such meadow that fate overtook her. She leaned over to pluck a narcissus, a flower so pale and bright it seemed enchanted. In that moment, the earth opened up, not with thunder, not with war, but with inevitability. Hades, lord of the underworld, rose from the abyss in a chariot of black iron and horses whose hooves struck sparks of fire. He reached out his hand and took her. She screamed. The earth closed, and the world changed. He did not demand her love, but he offered her power. No other goddess ruled there as she did. No one contradicted her. She was no longer that girl who danced in her mother's fields. She went down, and the world did not follow her. She sat beside Hades in silence, and something inside her began to settle. It was not happiness, but it was certainty. When Hermes came to take her, bearing Zeus' order and Demeter's grief, she did not rush to him. She listened. She weighed the world she had left against the one she had discovered. And then, as if knowing what must happen, she ate 6 pomegranate seeds, crimson and bitter. It was a choice, or perhaps a memory of one. The fruit bound her to the underworld, not forever, but for part of the year, half in shadow, half in light. Bride of 2 worlds. When she returned to her mother, spring followed. The trees blossomed, the frost melted, the birds returned, but Kori was gone. Now she was Persephone. She saw the dead. She ruled them. She wore an iron crown. And although she smiled at her mother, in her eyes was a silence that had not been there before. She did not speak of what she saw. Those who die do not return. But she returned. And in her return was written the cycle of all existence. The seed, the stalk, the harvest, and the fall. In the underworld, they began to fear and revere her as much as her husband, not for cruelty, but for justice, for knowledge. The Erinyes, the Furies, served her just as they served him. The souls of the dead knelt before her as before a queen. She was not warmth, but she was not cold. She was the stillness in the tomb, the rustle of poppies on a grave, the quiet voice reminding mortals that everything must sleep, even the gods. She was revered in Eleusis together with Demeter, in rites that whispered of death and rebirth. The initiates carried torches and fasted, seeking a glimpse of her path, the promise that even in death something stirs. They did not sing of her in war. She was not summoned by sailors or kings, but every field bowed before her. Every grave was hers. Every mother who buried a child called out to her in silence. Persephone did not choose her fate, but she shaped it. There were no chains on her. She did not weep in the darkness. She was a sovereign, and every year, when she rises from the underworld and the crocus blooms, she reminds the world that even what is lost can return, though it will never return as before. Her story was not a tragedy. It was a truth about the fact that joy and sorrow are never far from each other, that the earth feeds on both, and therefore she lives in myths and memory, the queen of spring and shadow, the goddess not of one realm, but of the threshold between them. long after the thrones of Olympus were carved from clouds and marble, long after the Titans were bound, and the world was divided between sky, sea, and shadow, came one who did not belong to this order. He was not born in the cold magnificence of Olympus, and he did not rise with a spear or thunder in his hand. Dionysus came into the world in secret, in sorrow, and in fire. He was the son of Zeus and Semele, a mortal woman from Thebes, and his story began not with war, but with a whisper. Semele was beautiful, and Zeus, eternally wandering, appeared to her under cover. But Hera, queen of the heavens and wife of the king of gods, saw the shadow of infidelity blooming again and moved against her with slow cruelty. She appeared to Semele in the guise of an old woman, kind and soft, and sowed the seed of doubt. If he is truly Zeus, she said, should he not appear to you in his true form? And Semele, caught between faith and fear, begged Zeus to appear to her as he appears to Hera. Zeus swore to fulfill any wish of hers and, bound by the oath, obeyed. When he appeared in his divine glory, crowned with lightning, shrouded in heavenly fire, the sight of him incinerated her. But from her womb, he saved the unborn child. He sewed the infant into his own thigh, carrying him there until he was ready to be born again. Thus Dionysus came into the world twice, once from a woman, once from a god. He was a child of death and life, mortal doom and immortal spark, and from the moment he cried out, the world shuddered with something new. He would never fit into the ordered halls of Olympus. His power was not in dominion, but in the unraveling of bonds. Zeus, knowing that Hera's rage would not cool, secretly sent the boy away. He was raised first by Hermes, then by the nymphs of Nysa, far from Olympus, in wild groves where vines crawled over stones and music never ceased. There Dionysus grew not like Apollo straight and golden, but crooked and askew, twisting like ivy. He discovered for himself the grape, the press, the cup. He drank, laughed, wept, danced, and taught others to do the same. But his joy was not simple, it was dangerous. Wherever he passed, the mind softened, and the walls that men built between themselves and their beasts cracked. Growing up, he wandered. He was a god without a home. He passed through Phrygia, Thrace, India. He came not with spears, but with drums, not with soldiers, but with women. Maenads followed him, their hair loose, their eyes gleaming with frenzy. They tore animals apart. They danced until their feet began to bleed. They shouted his name not in prayer, but in ecstasy. He was the god of wine, but not of that gentle sip from a cup in a king's hand. He was the god of intoxication, of release, of losing oneself in something greater in madness, in music, in ritual. Those who rejected him suffered. Pentheus, king of Thebes, cousin of Dionysus, mocked the god, called him a fraud, and forbade worship of him. Dionysus appeared to him in a guise, quiet and persuasive. He lured the king into the forest, dressed him as a woman, and led him to the Maenads. In their madness, they took him for a beast. His own mother, Agave, struck the first blow. When her vision cleared, she saw the truth too late. She carried her son's head on a thyrsus, shouting triumphantly, and the god was nowhere to be seen. Dionysus did not rage. He did not lift his hand. He showed people the madness they kept within themselves and then stepped aside as it bloomed. Finally, he returned to Olympus not with a plea, but with inevitability. 12 thrones were set, but Hestia, the eldest and most modest, yielded hers, and Dionysus, the youngest and wildest, took it. He belonged to them not by right of birth, but by right of proof. He traveled the world. He showed mortals both delight and despair. He died and returned. No other god could say the same. Dionysus became a symbol not only of joy, but of paradox. He was the god of theatre, where truth is hidden behind masks. He was the god of wine, which heals and destroys. He was the god of ritual madness, possession, that thin and trembling line between ecstasy and terror. His temples were the forests. His rites were secret. His followers laughed with tears in their eyes. His cult was not a worship of reason, but a submission to the elements. He was never tamed. Even among the gods, he moved like smoke. One moment a laughing youth with ivy in his hair, the next a stern figure crowned with snakes. His power was not forged in battle, it awakened in revelry. His victory was not over monsters, but over restraint itself. And in every cup of wine, in every dance that makes one forget the world, in every mask that hides a second face, Dionysus still lives. He was born twice. He was not born to rule, but he made the world feel what it feared to admit. That order is a lie. And beneath the stone temples and sacred laws, waits the truth of frenzy, transformation, and release. The gods of Olympus no longer walk among us. Their temples have crumbled. Their oracles have fallen silent. Their statues lie buried under moss and ash. But once they were everywhere. Their names were whispered with reverence, carved in stone, imprinted in the hearts of kings and slaves. They shaped the lives of mortals with laughter and rage, lust and revenge, whim and mercy. They ruled not from some distant heaven, but from palaces on mountain peaks that were very close. They were not perfect. They were not always just, but they were present, a mirror of the human soul, enlarged to divine proportions. And yet time is the only god that no one else can withstand. The old rites have faded. The torches of Eleusis have gone out. The feasts of Dionysus have given way to altars of another kind. The temples in which songs once rang now shelter only sheep and dust. And yet the Olympians live not in thunder, not in glory, but in stories. They live in the rustle of pages, in the silence before the start of a tale, in the lull after its end. Their myths are not forgotten. They have only changed form. Zeus, who once ruled the heavens with a clenched fist, now appears in the faces of kings, fathers, and tyrants. Poseidon, who crushed islands with his rage, is felt in every storm and shipwreck. Athena stands behind every wise decision, every clever war, every noble city. Apollo lives in music and prophecy, in the feverish dream of art and sunlight. Artemis remains in the untamed forests, in the moonlight touching a lonely path. Ours is on every battlefield, not with a spear, but in the roar of bombs and the silence that follows it. Hephaestus is here in the ring of a hammer on steel, in every bridge and weapon, in every machine bearing human ambition and suffering. Hermes flickers in every message, in every word swiftly carried across continents, in the grin of every thief. Hestia burns in every hearth, in every act of hospitality, in the quiet center of the home. Demeter waits with the seeds, with the plow, in every hunger and harvest. Persephone walks beside every mourner, her hands cool and firm, and in her eyes the promise of spring. And Dionysus still dances in revelry, in madness, in ecstasy that tears the world to shreds and restores it again and again. Some say the gods were never real, that they were dreams born of fear and firelight. But others say they were more than real. They were necessary, not because they were gods, but because they were us, made great. They fought. They loved. They betrayed. They forgave. They demanded worship not to be admired, but because through them, mortals could catch a glimpse of something greater than themselves. The divine was never meant to be distant. It lived in the soil, in the sea, in the blood. And it lives still. In the end, Olympus was never just a place. It was a mirror. It was that height where people looked and saw a written likeness of themselves. And although the gods no longer answer prayers, although thunder does not rumble in response to burnt offerings, their stories remain. They live because we live. And perhaps in this is their true immortality. When the wind rises among the ruins of Delphi, when the moon casts shadows on a forgotten altar, when a story is told by the fire and a child's eyes widen in wonder, the gods stir not in power, but in memory, in myth. And in this they remain eternal.